Ready? 6 o'clock, calling the meeting to order. Please stand and pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My normal speech, if you have a cell phone, please mute it or silence it, turn it off. Tonight is our first night with our new interim town manager, John O'Connell. I wish him well. You're taking on a big task here.
Thank you.
Yes.
And to make it official, I move that we appoint John O'Connell as our interim town manager.
I'll second it. All those in favor? Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay, approval of the treasurer warrants for January 25th and February 1st.
I move that we accept the treasurer's warrants as noted.
Second.
All those in favor? Accounts payable warrants for January 29th and February 5th.
I move that we accept the accounts payable warrants for January 29 and February 5th, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We have no special presentations.
Minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the minutes. Thank you, Kathy. Approval of the minutes for January 22nd, 2019. Do we have any corrections, omissions? If not, can I have a motion to accept?
Move the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. I'm sorry, I meant to say this before we started the meeting. There's one addition to the agenda. At the end of the meeting, the Board of Selectmen will be having an executive session. After the executive session, there will be no action. We have no special presentation. Committee appointments. Frank Sprague to the Waterfront Committee and Peter McRae to the Planning Board.
Madam Chair, I'll move the appointments as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. We have no public hearings. Public comment. At each regular selectman meeting, there will be time devoted to any resident or taxpayer of the town of Wiscasset to address the selectmen regarding any item that is not on the agenda for that meeting. Do we have any public comment? Yes. Please come and stand.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Rust. I'm from Wiscasset, and I solely came down here to thank and give credit to the amazing crew that shovels our sidewalks and takes care of our streets. I live on a little kind of crumbly dead-end road, and at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, you hear the trucks going by, and with the incredible cold weather, to see these people out sanding and shoveling our sidewalks without a complaint. I just wanted to publicly give credit and thanks for an amazing group of people. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Department head or committee chair, Parks and Recreational Director, 4th of July discussion. Lisa?
Judy, I'm sorry, in our packet we have 2 other documents.
Those have been put on hold.
Oh,
Yes. Those have been, I'm sorry, they were supposed to be removed from the packet.
they weren't removed from the electronic version either.
No. They went out, and because it was John's first meeting, I wanted to take them off the agenda to give him a chance to be able to look at everything before we present it to the board. So the only thing we have under department head is Parks and Recreation Director. Lisa?
So my only comment with that is that there have been meetings in the past where I arrived and there were items in the packet that were not in the electronic version. And now this is a case where there are the items in the packet and the electronic version have been removed. I prepare completely ahead of time online, so I would just like a heads up, maybe I could get an email if we're making changes prior to.
I will certainly do that. I apologize. When I saw the agenda, I removed it, but for some reason, there was miscommunication and the packet went out with the 2 items in it. But I removed them before it went out. But there was
Before it went out where?
electronically. It should have
Well,
not.
it's in the electronic
I know,
version,
I got
and
it.
it's also in the.
I know.
All right.
And as soon as I saw it, I immediately called the town office and said, remove it.
All right, well, next time also call me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just curious here. I follow along on the supporting documents online. May I ask which mysterious things have been removed?
It is the one for the carpeting
Okay,
and the
Asbestos.
one
Yes.
for the fountain.
thank you.
Yes. Okay, now, can we go to Lisa? Thank you.
Hi, I hope you have this in your packets.
Yes, we do.
I did send a proposal quite some time ago about 4th of July. And in the proposal, I would kind of explain some of my vision over last year's event, being the first time that I was the director and looking at the 4th of July event. And going forward, just my overall vision of it was we had a very hard time gathering volunteers. We had a lot of volunteers in September, but by the first week of June, we had very few volunteers due to several different issues, whether they were town employees that had resigned or people that had too much on their plate, or they weren't going to be in town for the 4th of July, they made other plans, etc. So the parade itself is a big undertaking. And so we had a very difficult time pulling that all together. Our staff gave up their holiday, and some of them even volunteered their time to come in just to make sure that we could pull things off. Some of the things that didn't pull off, we weren't able to get Grand Marshal. There was a lot of miscommunication about that, and we didn't know who was supposed to get the Grand Marshal, and it kind of went back and forth between the town manager and I, and the select board, I was told, was supposed to select a Grand Marshal, and then we didn't have a Grand Marshal, and I didn't know, I couldn't get from anybody what the protocol was for it. So that was just one thing that was, so we tried to get a Grand Marshal, and we came up with nothing. So, and 3 days before the event, it is very hard to find somebody that can fill that void. So that being said, I know that in the past, and prior to 2014, the parade was usually run by or overseen by the administration of the town. And looking at past documents and emails, I saw that the current town manager would pull in all the department heads or several different staff that worked for the town to work on it together. When Lori Smith departed, I believe Todd stepped in and said, well, we will do it. And that's kind of how it ended up in my lap when I came here. But it was very frustrating, the whole process of getting people together and doing this. So in that, and that being said, I would like to propose bringing back a 4th of July committee, similar to the town celebrations committee that oversees the tree lighting that we do support and we help them with, that they pull it all together. And that is pretty much the basis of my proposal that I sent to you, is to try to bring that back so we can bring some continuity to the town parade and some organization to it, and to have more people involved in it so that when the day comes, there is actually help on board.
Does the board have any questions, any comments?
Other than she's right.
Well, we can advertise for a committee
I think we should.
for volunteers.
It's an important holiday.
Well, I love the parade. I don't know what else to say. I advertise for a committee. If one department is, I don't think it's right to have the expectation that one department's going to work on the federal holiday. So a committee. I don't know what else we would do.
Are you saying the department heads were part of the involvement back in, when Lori Smith was here?
Just looking at emails from the past and documents from the 4th of July that I have in files and stuff, I've seen documents from the town manager to various people that worked in town at the time. And some of those looked like they were department heads, and some were office staff, and some were, I wasn't really sure. I don't know all the players involved, but it did seem like there was more organization. And looking back on town reports, and this is dating back to like the late 80s, there actually was a 4th of July planning committee that it looked like there were some people that, actually Mrs. Gordon, who I work with on the tree lighting every year, it was on at the time. So it goes back like 30 years, but I think it might be time for us to bring it back.
Okay. So John, can we advertise for committee?
Yep, I can do that.
All right.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, under unfinished business, Department of Environmental Protection permit approval. John?
Yeah. That relates to the proposed four bathroom, what would we call that? Building, down by the bridge. There is no problem from the DEP, and there is an approval dated, I think just a couple of weeks ago.
January 25th?
February.
It was the 25th, I believe.
Yeah, 25th. So, from that point of view, it's go ahead. My concern, of course, admittedly I'm new to this, but it's going to be a construction zone until October. And the idea of putting a brand new building in a location that isn't going to be perhaps dinged by equipment or muddied up, my own view is I'd be a little hesitant to do it this year. I also, there'll be an upfront cost of $20,000 to $21,000. Old Orchard Beach has Marion looked at Old Orchard Beach and someplace else, so it runs about $21,000. We could put it in the budget, and then we'd also have to look at the cost of maintenance and so on, and those numbers are actually surprisingly high. The current portable toilet rental and maintenance is $4,100, all included. And the current waterfront public bathrooms, the sewer and water costs alone are $3,300, and the maintenance is about $4,200. So that'd be $7,500. And then we're looking at a much bigger bathroom, so all the numbers would be higher on the water sewer. So it's actually quite a commitment. I hate porta potties, don't get me wrong, but
We've had a tremendous amount of complaints
Yep.
and also recommendations from our waterfront committee and our Chamber of Commerce, which is why we've come to this point. So I was really happy to read about the approval.
I'm glad we have the approval, but it doesn't mean that it has to be done this year. I kind of agree that maybe we need to take a step back, let the project downtown get completed. At budget time, we can consider putting this money in our budget and let the town approve it, either approve or deny. And then once the project is all done, then we can go ahead and start talking about parking, bathrooms, whatever else we want to be able to beautify our town. I think that's where we have to focus, but I'm only one board member, so we do have this at least, and this doesn't expire.
That was my question.
No, it does not expire.
I like the idea of putting it in the budget for this year so that if the townspeople want to move forward with it, we can do it at a time that makes sense.
Because I don't feel we have the money this year in our budget to even consider doing it. And like John says, there's going to be construction down there. Let's go with the porta potties this year that we have to, let's do what we have to do.
We did feel a tremendous amount of complaints, from what I understand, about the porta potties, so maybe we could bump up that service some way. And I really am not the one to speak. I don't know if anyone from the chamber is here, but that's where people would go to complain to our information office down on the dock.
Yes, Jim?
Thank you. I was concerned about this very project, and I'm so glad that Mr. O'Connell expressed his concerns about the cost. I've crunched some numbers on this as well, and our current bathroom takes up over $8,000 annually of our budget, just the current one. The water and sewer alone are nearly $6,000, and the figures I got do not include the electricity or any custodial maintenance costs, which is with Public Works, so I don't even know what it's costing Public Works to do the maintenance or maintaining it. So with that 21 to 22,000 fixed cost for that prefab structure, what's not factored into my understanding is also they're planning on, what's not crunched in is the costs to Public Works to cut all the lines in, because that was part of the strategy. So the labor of all that is not factored in as well. And if you put a public bathroom up there, I guarantee you're going to have twice as much usage. So you're talking about at least $16,000 just in water and sewer at that corner intersection. And I'm just concerned that we've got to start pay as you go in this town. It's nice to have all kinds of amenities, but we're not even covering the costs. I mean, the pier budget alone, the vendor fees don't begin to cover the cost of the piers. And what if the piers start needing maintenance issues? We're not covering that. We're not factoring that into our budget. And so at the same time, you see I've crunched the numbers there of what we've been getting in vendor fees. And you'll see the comparables of what that boils down to. I mean, the vendors are paying literally between 13 cents and 44 cents per square foot for a seasonal booth. I don't think you can get better rental anywhere in the United States almost for pier property. And I put comparables of what Rockland's charging for a similar 10 by 20 unit that we're paying $400 per season. People are paying $400 per season here. It's $3,000 in Rockland. And that's with no electricity or anything else provided, trash collection provided by the vendor, not by the town or anything. So if we are to ever consider a bathroom on the pier, I strongly advocate that that's also factored in raising costs on vendor fees, because they're going to be direct beneficiaries from that, huge beneficiaries, and it needs to be offset somewhat. Also, since the vendor applications, the annual applications are just they've called out for them or they're being accepted as of the 1st, perhaps the selectmen might want to look at vendor fees this year, because even if they were raised to 50 cents per square foot and unilaterally applied, that would be thousands of dollars more. I mean, I can't believe what a 30 by 34 is renting for in this town. I mean, the idea that it's 8 cents a square foot, it's absurd. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I think the biggest thing that we were to accomplish was having our DEP approval. And I think now we can just, like I said, step back and let's do it realistically. Look at all the numbers, like Jim says, crunch the numbers and see what we come up with. Take it to the voters and let them decide what they want to do. That's my viewpoint. Yes, Bob?
I'd just like to add, I thank you, John, for the research you did, and thank you, Jim, for yours, but having no number in the custodial service of Public Works, that is a huge omission, because I can tell you from experience that a lot of time goes into maintaining those bathrooms, and sometimes it's even on weekends, because people don't always treat the bathrooms really nice. But without that figure in there, it's pretty hard to make a comparison, but it just seems to me that we got complaints about our bathrooms, no matter how hard we tried. I'm sure you're going to get complaints about porta potties, but it would be really nice if you just call someone else and say, here's your problem, go fix it, rather than having to send Public Works crew people down to fix the issue. And there's other costs too, like if nobody bothers to drain the bathrooms and they freeze up, that can get really expensive. If the porta potties belong to someone else, and they have to deal with it. I just think if you put together some realistic numbers here, that bottom line there would be a lot higher.
Right. I thought when this was first brought to us, maybe I misunderstood, were they considering having them open year-round?
No,
No?
no, I don't think it's supposed to be open year-round.
Okay, I just wanted to check, make sure that.
And I know there was a lengthy discussion and a lot of research, and that's why we as a board voted to go ahead and apply to the DEP. And I think that the bigger conversation should be about our waterfront and how it is such an untapped resource for our town. This is the mid-coast of Maine. People come from all over the world to visit our coast. And Jim's right. I think that we need to look at the revenues that can be generated down there and what can be the best experience for the visitors and how we can get more money out of all of those people that come here.
Thank you.
We need a marina.
Yeah. Lisa, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that it's actually the Parks and Recreation Department that oversees the maintenance of the bathrooms. And the numbers, I did give John numbers today, and it is about $4,200 out of our Parks and Recreation budget to maintain that. So,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Any more discussion on that?
If we were going to do anything about the rate, shouldn't we do it now?
And I don't think it's,
Well, no, I mean,
yes, that's something we should consider when it's time to review the rates. Would you like that on the next agenda?
well, we should consider it before we put the, take people's applications.
And wouldn't that be part of the budget discussion? We tend to this town to look at the expense side of the budget, but I would like to also take a close look at the revenue side of the budget, and if there are places where we can increase revenues, like let's do that as part of the budget process.
Correct.
Well, I'm just saying that people are going to want to secure their spots before
Right.
very long if we're going to change the
And
price.
that's when we usually either, if we are going to do an increase, that is when we do it at that point in time.
Which is soon, like we're now, right?
When do they have to go out? April 1st? Is it?
Yeah, they're just accepting them as of the 1st, I believe, just a couple of days ago.
Okay.
So, I would think that if you're thinking about an increase, like I said, my suggestion was 50 cents as opposed to 44 cents and 13 cents a square foot. If there's a flat, the smaller units are paying more for their square footage currently than the larger units are. And if it was a flat even 50 cent per square foot fee per month, that will realize the town $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 more in income.
Sounds like Jim
Yet at
wants
the
to
same
go
time, it
budget
won't
committee.
hurt really any of the vendors. Sorry?
A Jim for budget committee.
No.
Okay, so shall we have that on our next agenda to look at the fees for the downtown pier?
Yes, but do we need a public hearing and just announce what we're going to do with that? I don't know what the ordinance says.
I don't remember ever doing a public hearing. No, we just, it's our responsibility to set the fees. So I don't feel we have to have I don't think we have to have a public hearing.
Put it on next agenda then.
Okay.
So if we're gonna do that though, Judy, can we get information like on what comparable space in other waterfront towns
yes.
goes for?
Yes.
And I don't know if the waterfront committee wants to chime in on that.
Okay. All right, are we done with that discussion? Under new business, Lincoln Health presentation by Jim Donovan. Jim? You need me to move.
Chair Colby, members of the Select Board, and members of the community. My name is Jim Donovan. I'm the president of Lincoln Health. So people don't get the glare from the back of my head. May I remove this microphone and kind of stand? You'll see better, and the glare will be less. Scott, my colleague Scott and I are here this evening as part of a tour, if you will, that we started back in September. And we've been coming to all of the select boards in Lincoln County to accomplish a couple of things. to give an update, an overview rather, of Lincoln Health and the services we provide, and talk about some of the issues at a 30,000-foot level that we're dealing with today, the trends in healthcare. And then just to hit on the main health system. There's been a lot of change lately, and actually this is the first board we visited since the first of the year, when a very significant event happened in the history of Maine Health, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The Lincoln Health organization, as I look at it and I describe it, has services that it offers in three large buckets, if you will. Going from left to right on the screen, most of what we do is done in an outpatient setting, either in a physician's office, as is portrayed here, or in the outpatient surgery suite, or in the radiology suite. Most of what we do these days, I'm going to talk about that trend in a minute, is in that setting, the outpatient setting. I'm going to jump to the right for a minute and then go back to the middle. Hospital care these days, when I say that, we actually provide hospital care in two of our communities, Damariscotta and Boothbay Harbor. There we have hospital services that range from the inpatient care that's provided in Damariscotta to a whole series of outpatient services that are provided in both communities. Back to the middle, Lincoln Health is the only organization in Lincoln County that offers nursing facility and skilled nursing care. We're unique in, I think, at least in southern Maine, where there are no other providers of long-term care or skilled nursing care. There are other providers providing assisted living, for example, but not in this field. And this is a huge part of our mission. And we have facilities and the full continuum of care in the senior living continuum, as we call it, in both Damariscotta and Boothbay Harbor. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute as well. Next one, Scott. So I just want to touch on 4 trends that are driving not only what we're doing, what we're responding to as a healthcare provider organization, but what every healthcare organization in the country is responding to, and is at the core of a lot of the debate you're hearing these days, and will continue to hear, whether it's in Augusta about Maine Care and the big topic Maine Care expansion, or whether it's in Washington where they're talking about Medicare. I mentioned outpatient care being an awful big part of what we do, and I've been in this business since the late 70s. And I have seen an absolute flip-flop in how we take care of patients. From most care being provided when a patient was in a bed in a hospital, to now very little of what we do is provided in the hospital setting. You have to be really sick to end up in the hospital these days. And the outpatient care is being driven by a whole number of things. Technology, as you see here, new technology. And frankly, also a lot of what we've responded to over the past 4 decades has been a result of how we're paid and by whom. And the new technology we see is very expensive. I put a picture up here of what we all think of maybe when we think of healthcare technology. This is a surgeon in the operating room. Some of the most expensive technology we're dealing with today comes in a bottle. It's called pills. So that's new technology just as much as a new piece of, big piece of equipment is. And that more and more expensive, more and more difficult for people to afford. Affordability and accessibility, A squared, if you will, are the 2 most important things that we focus on within our entire system. And what's happened over the last 40 years in Maine is that we've seen a shift from an out-migration for care from small communities and an in-migration to the larger communities. Portland and Bangor, I've seen an influx of care. Pretty much the rest of the state has seen a shift. That trend is continuing, by the way, and I think it will continue. It was interesting to hear some of the comments here about costs, because your comments are reverberating with me a little bit. because I know it's a very different business, but the way we're reimbursed and the way we've always been reimbursed often doesn't come close to actually what it costs us to take care of patients. And what this chart shows, this is the pie chart, which shows where all of our revenue comes from. Lincoln Health has annual revenues of about $150 million. We actually collect about $100 million of that. And what we collect, as you see, Medicare and Maine Care, as I mentioned, the federal government and the state government, combined are about 2/3 of our business. And that reflects both the geography and the demographics of Lincoln County. By some measures, we're the oldest county in Maine, and by some measures, Maine is the oldest state in the country. There's an argument about that. But the fact is that we are older than average in Lincoln Health and Maine. So 2/3 of our business comes to us, and we're paid less than what it actually costs to take care of those patients for that amount of money. The pie graph, the big yellow one, that's Medicare. Maine Care or Medicaid is there. I'm having to see the colors. In green. And the blue and the purple, which says Anthem and commercial, that's about 23% of what of our patients. That 23% pays the bills. It's called cost shifting. We've been doing it for as long as I can remember, where the federal government and the state government pays less than what it costs to take care of patients, and the commercially insured pays more than what it costs. And at the end, we hope it levels out. It's a balance. Next one. If any of you are employers or employees, this one is not new to you. The workforce shortages that we're facing in healthcare are getting worse, and it certainly has to do with this newest wave of baby boomers. I don't know what the numbers are of how many boomers retire every day, but it's significant. 41% of our entire Maine Health workforce, and that's 19,000 employees across the Maine Health system, which I'll show you that footprint in a minute, are over 50 years old. Here locally, almost a quarter of our registered nurses are 60 years old or older. The fact is, these last two things say that the pipeline coming in is not as wide as the pipeline going out. And we're doing a number of things. We're trying to grow our own. Some of the effects this has on us. Next one, Scott. So what does it really mean when we talk about workforce shortages? It means sometimes we're reducing our capacity to take care of patients. We're shortening hours. We're closing programs. Unfortunately, that has happened to us. Reduction in service. We're always looking at that. And this is becoming a very, very large issue for us across Lincoln Health, and that is having to bring in people from outside, from contract firms that come in for 3 months at a time or 6 weeks at a time to fill a hole in our staffing schedule. Very expensive. We don't like doing that. So what are we doing? Well, we're trying to grow our own. So the three that I've highlighted here, and this is not the only three, but CNAs, certified nursing assistants, registered nurses, and physicians. And we have our own CNA programs where we're running now. I think we're going to try to run 3 CNA classes a year, and we're doing better at that. Our nursing school, you may not know this, but Lincoln Health has been training registered nurses for about 14 years now in partnership with Central Maine Community College in Auburn. And we are the only college degree granting program in Lincoln County, the first one. Right now, we have it's a 2-year program. An associate degree program is 2 years. For the past, the 14 years that we've been in it, we've had a maximum of 8 students per year. This year, we've increased our faculty, so we've been able to increase the number of students we take. So we've increased that number from 8 a year to 15 a year, which we're very excited about. And we've got great community support from gifts to our nursing program. The Tufts MMC Medical School, we train medical students, second and third year medical students are on our campus with us for most of the year. And it's been a very successful way to introduce medical students while they're still in medical school to what a rural or small town practice is all about. Instead of them spending all of their time in Boston, where Tufts is located, or in Portland, they're spending time at 8 different rural sites around the state, and one of them is here with us. And they spend time in both Booth Bay Harbor and Damariscotta, and I believe they also spend some time right down the street here in the Wiscasset practice. The last trend I'll touch on is one of cooperation and regionalization, and this is taking a different look at this is what we're doing in response to the trends I've mentioned earlier, looking at things more regionally. When I say that, I'm talking about looking at things more regionally with our partners in Rockland and Belfast. We're sharing staff, both clinical and non-clinical staff. We've been doing this for a number of years. And it's a way to, as this says, leverage our resources to be more efficient. And it's been very successful. We're going to see more and more of that. So just to touch on quickly to kind of try to tie this all together. Go ahead, Scott. The Maine Health System started in 1997. And actually the first community hospital to join the Maine Health System was St. Andrews, and the second was Miles. In early 1997 and mid-1997, respectively. So at the very beginning, the Maine Health System was Maine Medical Center, St. Andrews, and Miles. And since then, it's grown to all those stars that you see down in the southern southern half of the state almost geographically. We consider that to be our service area. 1.1 million people live in that green shaded area out of 1.3 million in Maine. And we view that as our responsibility. All those stars are where we have hospital or hospital campuses across the region. And I put a couple things over here on the left. It's kind of interesting. You read a lot about healthcare these days. The only industry in the country largely in healthcare is the defense industry. And that hasn't always been the case. But we always strive to maintain our financial health for the benefit of our communities. And according to Standard & Poor's and Moody's that rate and judge the financial health of healthcare systems, we're the third strongest in New England, only after partners in Boston, which is Mass General and Brigham and Women's, and Yale New Haven in Connecticut. So we're very proud that by coming together as we have a system that's very strong and will benefit our communities for a long time to come. Next one, Scott. These are the stars you saw. These are the names of the places. I won't read them. They're probably all pretty familiar to you, but these are the members of the Maine Health organization. Before I answer any questions, I mentioned something that's very significant that happened. Since 1997, when Maine Health was formed, each of the Maine Health organizations has really functioned very independently and kind of floated on its own bottom financially and strategically. We were kind of a loose confederation. That changed on January 1st, where those 8 hospital organizations that you saw a minute ago merged into a single corporation. So now we're a single hospital corporation that's serving all those areas. We're still separately licensed, and we will continue to operate like that. But we believe what we've done by bringing these organizations together, and the total financial size is about $2.5 billion, that we have secured a brighter future, particularly for the small and rural communities, which some of us are struggling more than others. We're doing okay, but some of our partners aren't. The whole idea of the merger was to increase our financial strength, our financial leverage, and flexibility going forward. And I'm confident that we've accomplished that. We have a lot of work to do. This was a step I kind of call it the beginning of the end. May I answer any questions anybody might have?
Anybody have questions?
We greatly appreciate your time,
Thank you very much. for
and
coming.
maybe we'll call you when we come back next year.
Yes, please do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the 2018 Animal Control Survey. Pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, basically, we're at the halfway point of the budget and spend our money. And the alternative, as you know, is to have an animal control officer in each small community, which, as a practical matter, is even more expensive. And the model, I was at the county when we were putting this together, and the model worked fine financially when there were a lot of part-time animal control officers scattered around the service area. And that's not the case anymore. So prices are, the costs are going up. So. And it's administered by the Sheriff's Department, which you probably know.
Okay, Main Service Centers Coalition, appointment of voting delegate, an alternate.
I'm not particularly familiar with this, but it is primarily a lobbying organization. They talk about, on the second page, they talk about the priority legislation in 2018. And I don't know whether my predecessor attended those meetings or not. Do you know, Bernice?
I don't know if she did or not. I don't.
I've sat through enough committee hearings in Augusta to realize that your numbers win, not necessarily brains. And
If it's something you're not interested in, that's fine with me.
I was 23 miles to Augusta, I've done that road plenty of times.
That's
So
fine with me.
it's up, whatever the board wishes to do,
If you don't want to attend, that's fine.
unless somebody else does.
Well, I guess I just would want to know, like, why is this on our desk? Have we participated in the past? To what extent and to what benefit, before we made a decision and if Wiscasset's out or not? And you don't know much about it. I don't know much about it. Does anybody here?
I just know there's a $500 fee.
Well, that takes care of that.
So why would we, but we must have done it in the past, or not?
I don't know if we've ever, I don't think Marion's ever gone to this. I don't believe so. But I think
So is this just a solicitation letter?
I think so. I think it's a yearly thing, that if we want to send somebody.
Pay them enough in dues. We pay them enough in dues.
Yes, I think so
Not
too.
these people.
Yes, they're part of Maine Municipal.
It's part of MMA, so that's something.
Yeah.
This is something you'd be interested in going to?
No, but I want to know why.
Just ask it.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that I want to do it, but it's, you know, like, are we going to flippantly disregard something because John doesn't want to go if we don't know what it is? That's all I'm asking, like, why is this on our desk? If it's just a solicitation and we've never done it before and we had no benefit, then, okay.
Do you want a motion?
Yes.
We're not, I move that we don't even worry about this and not spend $500 to send someone to Augusta to yet another MMA meeting.
I'll second it. All those in favor? Okay. 5-0. Okay, letter of intent, groundwater discharge to municipal sewer system by Fulman Mason Station Powerhouse Building.
Yeah. Basically, Ransom Consulting Engineers have initiated a lab examination of what they want to get rid of into the town system. In the material we got, when I looked at it in detail, I think I'm missing a page which says there were no contaminants. It's not in my sheet, but the implication is no contaminants. And as you can see from the letter, they're anticipating no more than 4,800 gallons to be discharged to the sewer system per day over a 2 or 3 day period. And I spoke to the new supervisor of the wastewater plant, and he said charge the standard fee, which I believe is 13 cents a gallon. And no reason not to accept it. No, Richard Gates, by the way, we might introduce.
Yeah.
We want to stand up, Richard? Richard is our new supervisor of the wastewater treatment plant, and his first day actually preceded mine. He started on Friday. And I know the board agreed with the, with the offer and so on and so forth, but correct me, but I'm not sure the board has actually formally approved him. I don't know.
We don't have to.
You don't have to?
No.
All right. Okay.
You are.
Okay, I got it.
Okay.
All right, just.
But we do approve of you.
We do approve.
I appreciate it.
And what is his last name?
So he's worked 1 day longer than I have.
So we're gonna be charging, who? The 15 cents a gallon.
13 cents.
13.
I will contact them to find out exactly who's paying the bill. I believe it's, they talk about whoever the owner is now.
I believe it's Mason Station LLC, that's
And
not.
my question would be, have you had any difficulty collecting payments from that individual?
A lot more than 13
Yes.
cents a gallon.
Good question.
I would like to make sure
Because
that we can bill correctly before they start putting water in.
Well, my question would be, do we want to deposit down first? as
Well,
a
wait, hold
portion of
on
that
a
money?
second. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Sure.
But I was looking at a map of the whole Mason Station area. This is the area that's surrounded by the brown fields, right, which are highly contaminated and which are being cleaned up. So who is this Ransom Consulting? Who hired them? And are we certain that the random samples that were selected are really a fine? What happens if we take some contaminated material and put it into our wastewater system? And if we want to second guess this, I feel like it might be important.
Is this water coming from the Mason Station? Is that?
Yes, it
Yes.
is.
Yes.
Yes.
It's water that's from the Mason Station that is a result of rainwater filling up in I mean, you read the same thing I did. The structure's been impacted by the electrical transformer release. Like, I'm no scientist, we've been down this before talking about the main Yankee area, but I don't want to just, I feel like we maybe would serve ourselves and our town well to consider looking into this a little bit more. Just a thought. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but it seems not like a little deal to me. It seems like a big deal.
Well, Ransom has an excellent reputation, and apparently has been supervised by DEP through this whole sampling area or process. And also, they process the water through a bag filter and activated carbon treatment to remove any contaminants before they discharge into
So, and I read that, which is what makes me question it. If it's been found non-detect, ND, then what contaminants would they be removing anyway? And if all the contaminants aren't removed by the bag and the charcoal, what happens to the sewage system if we put it in there?
Well, let me give you a little more detail. As John said, Ransom's reputation is right up there. So they're sticking their necks out to have the lab do the analysis. What I want to do is their first release. I want to take that and see what it does to our system, just as a check before they release any more. Make sure I don't have any issues. But I feel comfortable with the people that have done all this analysis, and I happen to have worked down the Mason Station, so I will ask them a few more questions before I allow the water to be released.
So are you describing like a control? Like before they drop in the 4,800 gallons on the first day, are you going to do like some control and do, I know you guys do a lot
I'm
of
going to go down to
testing.
the plant to see exactly where this water is, and if I have any concerns about it, I'll tell them, no, I don't want to take it. You can call Clean Harbors to take it down to Portland. I don't want to put the plant at risk. You've had enough.
It would be expensive if we
You-
did something to the plant, not to mention there could be environmental
They don't,
consequences.
they don't, I don't want to put the plant in any more jeopardy than what currently exists with the DEP. I can tell you that,
Thank you on that one.
okay?
Yes, Jason?
Yeah, just so I'm not confused, is there something new going on there, or this is water that has collected there, that they 4,800 gallons they need to get rid of?
It's more than
It's
4,800
the,
gallons.
But
it's
this is
just,
gonna be a regular thing that they're gonna?
No.
no, it's the
this is the one-
disposal
Oh.
of rainwater, groundwater that's accumulated.
Not everybody at once, please. That's one at a time. Go ahead.
I'm a teacher, so when I start talking, usually everybody stops. Okay, the remediation efforts require disposal of
Really?
rainwater, groundwater that has accumulated within the structure and has been impacted by the electrical transformer release. So it just sounds like it's the result of rain and probably maybe all of this, we've had a lot of rain this winter and the defrosting. But what do we, I mean,
Ben, you have a question?
Yeah, comment, I guess. We're not talking sewerage here, we're talking groundwater.
Is that correct?
Yeah, but they want to put it back in the sewer system.
Well, that's my next point. The town has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to remove groundwater from the system. Why would we turn around and welcome who knows how many thousands?
Oh, we have capacity to take it. It's not.
I know,
an
but
issue.
we have worked to get the groundwater out of the system.
it's like
Well, you
15,000
still
gallons.
have a lot of I&I issues, just to let you know.
I'm sure, but,
Yeah.
Yes, Bob?
Yeah, just a simple question, but if this is groundwater and it's clean, why don't they just squirt it out on the ground?
I think since they work with the DEP doesn't want to see that happen.
Because there's something wrong?
No,
with
I
it?
don't think so. I think since there's a treatment system right down the thing, it's like, go ahead and send it right through.
It's water.
I mean, it's really up to you. I really don't, I feel comfortable doing it, but if you don't, we can just tell them they can go through Clean Harbors and probably pay 5
That's
times
like
as
2
much.
trailer truck loads for Clean Harbors.
So,
And where would they take the water?
down at Portland probably.
Show it in the bay.
It's water that's been impacted by some electrical transformer release. So like some container filled up with groundwater, it's got 15,000 gallons of water they want to get rid of. That's been exposed to whatever the electrical transformer release is.
My opinion, listening to everything, I would rather see them let Clean Harbor take care of it. Not put our system into that jeopardy.
I would agree.
If that's your wishes, I could do that.
Do
And
you
would
need
you
a
like me to,
motion?
would you like me to communicate that back to them?
Yes,
We
please.
can write a letter.
Okay.
Do you need a motion on that? or is-
I think it'd be best.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion that we deny the release of 48,000 gallons of discharge into our system per day for the next, for over 2 or 3 day period, and let them go to Clean Harbor.
So,
It's
It's
been-
4,800 though.
I said 4,800, didn't I?
Judy?
Yes.
If I could, I mean, I'm fine with the motion, but I don't feel comfortable recommending another vendor. I think we should just
Okay,
deny
okay.
the.
Cross
deny.
Clean
Let them
Harbor.
figure it out, because they'll have to pay for it.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
all right. All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Okay, sewer lien foreclosures. We have a list of sewer liens. Yes, ma'am.
We have a list in front of you,
Yes, ma'am.
and the one that did have an insufficient check that has cleared, so we're good on that one.
The first one?
The first one that's on the list, correct.
Okay.
And then there's one of them that we believe is deceased.
he is.
Of course, there still must be some heirs to the property. And then Stephen Heald has made a payment arrangement. I've got to follow up with Stacy to make sure that he has made a payment he's supposed to make on the month of January, and then pay the rest of it off this month.
Okay.
Burton Blackman, haven't heard a word from him.
Okay.
And then Matthew Huber, I haven't heard anything from him either. So these liens have already foreclosed, so technically the town owns the property.
Can we put it on our list for February 13th?
You can.
I'm
Put it
sorry.
on the list for February 13th?
Yes. Put these on the list for February 13th.
Yeah, and I know there's one of them, unless they come and pay, that's going to be on that list for real estate as well as sewer.
Okay. So these will go on, yes, Bob?
If I could just ask, on this sewer lien, would you foreclose, like if it was a house trailer, on the house trailer or on the property?
That's a sticky wicky. Usually you send the bill to the trailer, but you're actually foreclosing on the property.
Oh, I see, okay.
All right, so these will be on our February 13th list. We don't need an action tonight.
We don't.
We're taking it February 13th. Yes.
I know it's a sore spot, but what are we gonna, let's start with these. What are we gonna do on the 13th with these?
We've discussed it so many times. I think what we need to do, this is my opinion, we have to look at each one of these and decide what are we going to do. Basically, we own these properties. Do we go through a situation where we continue sending out letters and hoping that they respond, which Bernice can tell us how many letters have gone out to people, not just these people, but even property tax, that have gone out to the people, and like I said 2 weeks ago, they crumble it up in a ball and they throw it in the trash and they don't care. We can't write these off, as far as I'm concerned, in any way, shape, or form, because now you're giving them a free ride. They've got to pay their bill, one way or another. We can either sit and wait until they want to sell the house and then we get the property, but they're going to continue going behind. They're not trying to get themselves out of a hole. And we've tried everything. We've done payment plans, we've sent letters, we've done everything possibly that we can except go into their house and take the money from them and pay the bill. We've done everything. They are responsible adults that need to start being responsible for their bills.
So we need to establish, first of all, if they're elderly. Because
If they're what?
if they're elderly and over 65, because there is a different process that we have to go through if that's the case. And they have a homestead exemption. There's a different class to sell that property. Is it property that we want to keep? Is it property we want to sell? Those are questions that only the board can make the decisions on. And then what
And
process?
this board is not at all in a position to do that at the moment, which is what I would suggest that we do, as we do with the property abatements. The first thing they have to do is come in and fill out general assistance, and we have, this is what we've done in the past, we have to know that they would be eligible for general assistance before we would even consider the property tax abatement. I'm saying before we consider doing anything to help anybody or whatever, they have to go through that and prove that there may be a need. If not, I'm not interested in talking to any of them. They have to, at this point, prove that they've got a need above and beyond the call of duty. If not, I'm with you and just pass a motion that we start legal action against all of them.
That's what we were planning to do, if I may, Judy, that's what we're planning to do on February 13th. And we're gonna go through them one at a time. We're not gonna, we as a board don't want to make a sweeping motion and sell everybody's house. We wanna look and gather all of the information on everyone. And then there are some of them where we're gonna be like, okay, this guy wants to work with us and has shown good faith and effort that they're doing that, so we're gonna set this one aside. But this one owes $60,000, has a functioning business since the year 2006, so now we're gonna sell that property because we need the money to put the restrooms down on the pier. Like, that's what we're gonna do on February 13th. We've been through this though. Yes, we will, and that's why we don't wanna do it in the regular meeting.
But what I'm suggesting will give you that information from what we heard last time. We'll listen to this person tell us who's living where and how much money they have. And we can't do that. We can't even begin to. We're gonna sit here and guess.
I think, in my viewpoint, all I need to know is you owe taxes from 2009 up until 2018. You haven't paid a penny, or maybe paid $1,000, and you owe let's just take out of the hat $20,000. There's no way on this God's earth you're gonna get caught up. You're not gonna be able to do it somehow. We have, as a board, and I've been on this board for many, many years, and we've discussed it and talked about it even when Ed was on the board. We have tried and tried to go back to these people and say, hey, we're willing to help you. We're willing to give you payment plans. We're willing to do everything we can. They're not listening. And why should they? Because as boards, we're not doing anything. We're taking the rug and lifting it up and shoving it underneath the rug.
That's not what my suggestion seeks to do.
Well,
If anything, it needs to push it along.
these people know that this meeting is coming up February 13th, do they not?
And there are some people that plan on attending that meeting to address you personally as the board.
And that's what we need to do. Let them, we've asked them to come in and see the tax collector. We've asked them to come into the town office. They have not. Some have, some haven't.
And when someone stands up there and says, oh gee, if you just give me another month and a half, I'll have the money, what are you gonna say?
You need to follow the law.
I'm trying to do that.
Well, and the attorneys are going to have more information for us on that night. Because if you remember, the gentleman was here from our attorney firm before, said you have two options as far as payment plans, up to 5 months, or the other payment plan, if you're talking about doing that, it's not an automatic foreclosure. The automatic foreclosure has already happened. If you sign those long-term installment contracts, you have to take them to court to foreclose on them.
See, we don't want to do that.
No, we do not.
Enough expensive. And we've gone into agreements with people, and yes, they say, yes, we're gonna make the payment, and they don't. And we've got several on that list that have done that.
And we have several that have paid. I mean, we had 15 lien discharges yesterday from that 16 year. You've got 3 quitclaim deeds to sign tonight that are from prior year's taxes that we did. We are collecting them. There are some that we just have not heard from. I'm hoping that list is small by the 13th. They have until the 11th to come in and pay us. We've contacted as many people as we can. We've contacted, we had just a mortgage holder in here. There was a personal financed mortgage holder yesterday. And she and her sister are looking to be able to get it paid up and cleared up. So we're working diligently to get it done, but it comes to the point where the board needs to make the decision where it goes from there. The tax collector's done her job, the treasurer's gonna have her job done, and now it's up to the board to move.
No, that's you saying how it should be.
That's the law, Ben.
We're going to meet. I still don't know what we're going to do. You almost said we're going to stand like Solomon and take everybody one by one and decide what we're going to do right there on the spot.
You need to decide, first of all, if you want the property or you want to sell it. I'm not going to sit down with John, and we're not going to advertise every piece of property that we may have on the 13th or the 11th when it forecloses.
Why not?
Because the board may say, well, that's a piece of property that we want to build something on. I mean, you folks need to make those decisions.
But I don't think it's their decision, it's the board's decision.
That's my point.
It's our decision whether we want to, if John Smith, gee, he's got a nice piece of property, I think maybe we'll keep that one. But Tom Jones over here, what the heck, we'll just sell his.
And you folks are the ones that make the decisions which piece of property is out for sale.
I just don't think you're going about it in the best way, but.
Yes, Bob?
Have some of the same concerns, but I think my biggest concern is that we're setting ourselves up to be in a situation where we don't treat everybody the same. And I don't think that's a good spot to be in. And just for example, I'm looking at just a short list here. I crossed one out, so I know I got 4. There's a guy in the house that owes sewer. There's a guy that might be dead. Somebody owes that. There's a guy that's got a payment agreement. And there's a guy that lives in a trailer on someone else's property. So there's 4, and they're all different. How are we going to decide? Well, I mean, I know we have to decide, but I think it makes it much more difficult. And this is just the short list. We haven't even gotten to the other stuff, where it's going to get more and more and more complicated. Where you've got elderly people and you've got people with children, and you know the list is going to get longer and longer. And I kind of like Ben's idea. If somebody is coming to us and asking for some sort of relief, maybe they should fill out the general assistant application so that we would have a document in front of us. You don't like that?
I don't, because, I mean, that's, I guess that's not the normal process when the foreclosure happens. If they wanted a poverty abatement and they felt that they.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about any kind of an abatement.
Well, then what are you talking about?
I'm talking about somebody that wants extra time or has some.
But there isn't extra time, that's the point. It's an automatic foreclosure. It automatically forecloses on February 11th. Period, end of story. The town owns it. So now what are we gonna do? Are we gonna kick it down the road another year or 2 or 10? Or are we gonna
Nobody
make
has suggested
decisions?
that.
Well, no, but I mean, that's what Judy has said has happened in the past. So at what point in time do we say, this is a law, there's been a law put in place for the town to use, and this is how we progress with that law?
Which is why I said, if they can't show through that form that they have a need, why would we even listen to them? They've got to prove that there is a need for some sort of help.
So he is talking about a poverty abatement application?
No, I am not.
Well, then what is it then?
I want them to go through that and at least find out whether or not they meet the guidelines for assistance, okay? If they can't meet those guidelines, that tells me they have the ability to pay their tax bill. And there's nothing further to consider.
But you're only adding one more thing to the process. You're only adding one more thing.
And all I'm saying is, anybody that can't meet that threshold, they get a letter, we have foreclosing, we're taking your piece of property.
We already own it.
They already
They
said
already
that.
own it. That's the issue. We already own the property. Now what do we do with it?
Okay, but I would bounce back what Bob was saying, that we've got to do something that looks fair at least.
So if we at least meet on the 13th, you'll have a list, in addition to the one for the sewer, you'll have a list of the ones that are foreclosed as of the 11th of February for the 2016 taxes. Molly has generated a list, as she has given you periodically, that says this piece of property is owned by so-and-so, it's on this road, their last payment was made on this date, they have a homestead exemption, they don't have a homestead exemption, what have you. So that you've got that pertinent information, even if you don't make any decisions that day, you've got that pertinent information, and the people that want to come and talk to you, who have already asked to come and talk to you, there's been several of them. Whether they show up or not, I don't know. But they have asked when they can come and talk to the board, and that's the date we've given them.
Just as a practical matter, what happens if 15, 20, 30 people show up? You know, you stay all night, next day, give them 10 minutes, 20 minutes to tell you what? I'm just being devil's advocate here.
I don't think it's gonna be that many.
You don't think so?
No.
All right.
She's been reaching out to people for months and
Exactly.
months. Since Bernice joined us, she's been cleaning up our books and tying up loose ends. And apparently it's been going on for years. Like for years, there were errors in the books, and this is like one of the more uncomfortable errors that I think that we have a duty to resolve. And thank you, Bernice.
I think we have to stop sending the wrong message to the taxpayers, that it is okay not to pay your taxes. That's the message we're sending. Now, I live on a fixed income. You live on a retirement pension. We all do. But somehow we manage to pay our taxes. And yeah, I'm not saying nobody doesn't get behind. Yes, they do. I agree. There's tragedy or something happens in everybody's lifetime. But we're not villains. It's not like they can't come to us and say, hey, I'm having a medical problem, I've got this type of problem, but I can do this, this, and this. I'll help them as long as they are willing to do what they say. But we have many on that list that have done this. We have bent over backwards to try and help them. Offered everything, sending out homestead exemption applications with it, everything we can, that it's almost like they don't want to help themselves.
I think it's meant, I really agree with everything you're saying. I mean, we're not, I agree with you that they need to pay.
But we
I'm
have
just
to
saying that,
decide.
well, I just think that this particular approach is not gonna be a good one. It's like the 4 names that we had here tonight. I'm more willing to pass a motion and instructing the town manager to do what needs to be done to collect our money. Period, do what it takes.
We've already gone through the sending out the bill and sending out the reading notice and sending out the foreclosure notice, so what more is there to collect?
There's nothing to do with, we have to decide whether we want the property.
Yeah.
It's ours.
Look, that's what I don't understand. We've got this list in front of us of only 4 names on it.
That's not the whole.
I'm not even making a decision tonight.
No, do you remember the list that she brought and we spent an hour, it was right before we talked about the white Christmas lights, right? And we spent an hour talking about all the people. Do you remember that one? And it was like sad and really upsetting, and I was like, can we not go through them? Can we do this as a separate workshop on a Saturday morning? And now we finally agreed on this Wednesday night at 5:30, because there is quite a list, and there's a lot of information on each one, and we did spend an hour. We got through like the first page of it, and we all agreed, let's do this at a separate meeting so that we can focus on this tough job. And then,
What's tough? I'm ready to make a decision.
well, you weren't that night, and I think if the list was in front of you, you would be reminded of all of the questions that you had then.
So Ben, let me clarify, let me ask a question. These people on this list, there's 4 names. We own that property. We own their property. It belongs to the town. Are you ready to put for sale signs on it?
Sure. I would put with the caveat that if the one on the bottom was $1,400, if that person came in and paid the bill before we sold the property, I'd give it back to them.
This is why I'm going back to, what, a month ago? I think I said this at a meeting. If you send a letter out to these people saying every one of these 4 and everybody on the other list that owes taxes all the way back to 2009, you owe $40,000 in back taxes to bring you up to date. You have 1 month to pay that $40,000. If not, there's gonna be a for sale sign on your house. Plain and simple. And I guarantee you, they'll pay their taxes because they're gonna wanna keep their houses.
Well, I think that's a great idea. But why do we have to meet to do that?
Because nobody would make that decision. This board has not made that decision.
And also because there were some that have been sending in like 1,200 here and 1,500 there, and there were some that we haven't heard from since 2002, and there were some that just got their first letter, and every single one had a different story. And I'm not willing to sell that lady's house who's been sending in 1,200 or 1,500. Right? There was a lady who came to a couple of meetings. She's in the same boat. We own her property, but she's made a really good faith effort to get current, and we want to work with her. So I'm not going to make a sweeping. I would never vote for a sweeping thing where we, you know, she's included in that batch with the for sale sign. That's why we're going to do the workshop so we could go through them all.
If you have a family, a man and a wife come up in here, and I think there's one couple that are planning on coming on the 13th, that we each got an email regarding. If they come in here and say, you know, gee, I really want to work, I want to pay my taxes, I'm willing to do this and I'm willing to do that to be able to get it forward, I'm willing to give it a chance with the understanding that they have to be committed. And if they're not committed, and if they don't live by their commitment, this is the consequences that you're going to have.
And
No,
they
it
only
sounds
get
like you're
5
the one
months,
kicking the
right?
pants down the road.
No, there's,
No, I'm not.
the
No, I'm
attorney
not.
explained to us that we had the option to give them the 5-month payment plan or sell their property. I think,
That's basically
Is that
what it
correct?
boils down to.
So-
And the same one you're talking about is the mortgage holder that I was talking to yesterday.
Yes, we discussed that, I know. But that again, to me, you have to take case by case. I'm with Kim on this. You can't just blanketly say, okay, we're going to sell all these properties. You can't do that. I don't want to do that. I want to try and help these people as best as I can. One more time. One more time. And if they can't come to this agreement and live by their agreement, then what are they showing us?
And there could be properties on the list where nobody shows up and we haven't heard from them, and then the choice is easy, put a for sale sign on that property. And so we will clear things off the list, and I don't think it's gonna be easy.
Because
no matter
everybody
how you
has
do it.
been given notice that there is this meeting on the 13th, am I not mistaken?
Judy?
Yes, Jason, just a minute. Just a minute, Jason. Bob?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, we beat this around the same way we have a couple other times.
I know.
We've advertised this meeting, we've talked to people, told them to be there. It's time to follow through. But if I could just ask one question of Bernice. The guy that may be deceased, has the property owner been, I mean, have we identified who now owns the property?
heirs of.
Yeah, and somehow communicated.
No, we've sent it to that same address to the heirs of, and we haven't heard back from anything as to who.
I think,
I believe there's actually somebody else living there. I talked to the water company.
well, I'm just thinking that, you know, we need to be sure that the responsible person is aware of what's going on. They might run right in and pay the taxes, who knows? I mean, their sewer bill, but that seems like that's a little different than the other ones because, you know, the responsible person may not be aware of it or may have been just made aware of it. But I guess that's one reason why we need to pick out some and handle them differently. Because I wouldn't want to handle that like he'd been getting a bill for years, not knowing that it happened.
Oh, because Daddy doesn't care.
No, I'm sure.
Well,
But
in that case, there may not be any surviving relatives. His mother and brother died quite recently, and the father's not there.
no.
Jason, you had something?
Yeah, two questions. Now that this automatic foreclosure is gonna happen, does that mean there's a new policy that this won't happen next year and the year after? Are the new rules in place? So this can't happen to new people that don't pay their things? Is there a way to avoid this in the future? Does that happen? And my other question
I
is,
don't think it's new, but yeah.
No, it's nothing new.
okay, so there's not a new protocol that says you're 2 years behind, we're gonna foreclose automatically? Or
No,
whatever.
there's
Okay.
been foreclosures before. I mean, some of these people that we're gonna be foreclosing on the 11th, we foreclosed on last year, we foreclosed on the year,
That
we
leads to my next
foreclosed on the year
question.
before.
What happens when you foreclose on them? Do they get to live in the house for free from now on until it gets sold?
That's my
Yeah.
point.
That's basically
Yeah.
where
I
we're
mean,
at.
if they got a property that nobody wants, seems like it's a great deal to stick it out and, you know? I don't know, I'm just asking, are you gonna physically put them out of the house once you own the house?
No.
You know, I didn't think so, but I mean, what happens is,
Yeah. I mean, when the town sells it, the town is quitting its claim against the property.
right?
So whomever is purchasing it has to then deal with whatever there is left behind.
I apologize for that. I turned it off earlier.
I'd say it's rather appropriate music.
Yeah.
Okay,
And it's not anything new. I mean, the same rules and regulations have been in place for years, that you send out a tax bill, you have 8 months. If they haven't paid it between 8 months and 1 year, you send out a 30-day notice, and you send out the lien, and we notify the mortgage holders and interested parties. They have 18 months, 30 to 45 days before that 18-month date is up. You send out a better pay up or else. And in addition to the better pay up or else, it goes out certified mail. This year we sent them out regular mail with an attachment behind it that said, oh, by the way, you owe these other year's taxes, and if this does foreclose on the 11th, the town will own your property. Come to talk to the board on February 13th if you're unable to pay this.
Are you collecting rent from these people? I know that's a ridiculous question, but they are just living for free.
no, we are collecting nothing, that is the
I
point.
know, yeah.
That is the point.
Right.
I'm trying to get across. Yes, ma'am.
Since this has come to light, what are our liabilities? Someone living in a property that is owned by the
We
city?
have none. We've already gone through that with our attorney.
Yep.
That has been discussed with our attorney. We have none at this point.
Okay, one more about, I'm not facetiously, but are you aware of any situations where it's a renter that is in there so that the previous owner is still possibly collecting rent from someone.
We suspect that that's the case in a couple of instances, Kim.
So there are cases where.
That's why it
But-
has to
but
be
there
looked at
again-
case by case.
Yes, I agree that it does need to
That's
be
where,
looked at.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have the institutional knowledge of the town,
Right.
you know, on Joe Schmo Street, who is in
Sure.
this house, whereas some of these folks that are local are going to know more about the property than John or I, either one, to just say, carte blanche, sell it.
Catherine, did you have something?
Yes. I would say that we would just end the discussion.
Now.
We are meeting on whatever date it is that I have.
The
in my book,
13th.
The 13th.
At 5
And we
o'clock.
will discuss it all over again, but that will be the only time.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing that's on the,
And there will be the specific.
and we'll
pieces of
figure out what we're
property
going
in
to
addition
do.
sewer.
And we will be getting that before the 13th, I assume?
Have to be after, it'll be the 12th,
Okay.
because they don't actually foreclose until the 11th.
But this,
But Molly's been working on the list. that
it'll be
we-
in our boxes on the 12th?
Yes.
Okay. Prior to the meeting? Okay,
Yes.
so we have a chance to look at it?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go on. 2019 Spirit of America consideration. They want us to pick a local person to get the 2019 Wiscasset Spirit of America Award. We have till what, February 28th?
You have to do you of June.
Right. Your pace setter, if you get it in by February 28th.
Okay.
Otherwise, June 30th is fine.
All right, so anyone that has any consideration, they can give it to John.
Yep, absolutely. I'm familiar with the program.
Thank you.
In fact, you are.
We have a couple communications, and John's going to take care of this, about the Charter Commission broadcast TV surcharges and the change in service.
Okay, basically, this is an increase. Charter Communications or Spectrum, effective February 15. TV Silver will go up from $15, or sorry, will be reduced from $15 to $9.99. And then the Gold will drop, Cinemax, Epics, and they'll be available for subscription. I don't have any of this stuff at home. So it'll be, it's here, it's on its way.
Okay.
I don't, we get DirecTV, I don't get community channel.
Does this mean my cable bill's going to go?
I don't know what your table is. I'm not familiar with this stuff.
Okay. All right.
I don't think you've got any choice.
No.
Well, I was going to ask, is there any possibility of putting this service out to bid and see if another cable system might be willing? I get this cable system, and it seems like
Because it's our only choice.
lots of times there are channels that aren't running, or they
Not
don't
only
come in
the-
very good.
But they are
Our
the
only
bill.
other choice would be the dish, or what's the other one? Dish and there's something else.
DirecTV.
DirecTV. That's the only choices you have.
Well, my question, is there a different cable system? that we know?
Xfinity.
I don't believe so. I don't believe there's another cable
They have
system.
to string the
There's
cable,
Xfinity.
Yeah,
and they own the cable, I believe.
because all the cables belong to Adelphia, because they're the ones that originally put them in here. And then Time Warner bought it, and now Spectrum owns it. So those cables all belong to Spectrum.
And this will happen effective on or after February 15. They do say you can call them, I can call them and see if there's any choice. I don't believe there is. 'Cause they-
Plan on spending a lot of time is pushing the different buttons to get to a real person.
I enjoy it. But if the board wishes, I can chase them down. It's kind of futile.
I don't think there aren't any other options.
I don't think so. And I think it's just an informational thing myself, just letting us know they're changing their rates.
Oh, nice of them. No, instead I've had this service since the thing went on the line. The service itself, in my opinion, has never been worse.
Right.
Well, yes. That's,
It used to be in the old days, if the system went down, they actually gave you credit for the days it wasn't running.
well, they don't do that anymore.
on
I
Monday.
tried. Last time we had an ice storm.
No,
Okay,
I tried.
quick claim dates. I'll make a motion to approve the quick claim deeds of Scott and Wendy Connors, map RO2, lot 017A, Scott and Wendy Connors, map RO1, lot 035C, and Mabel McPhee, map RO4, lot 001.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Town managers report.
All right. Well, why don't we start with new appointments, apart from Richard, who's already been introduced. Today, Dennis Simmons, who was offered the job as EMA director, not only has he accepted the offer, but he's cleared the background and the medical. So I spoke to him, met him for the first time, and he's got a number of jobs, but he'd be available to be here full-time early March, but he's on a schedule that has some days available, and he mentioned that in fact, this week, Thursday, he'd be available to work all day, and he promised to send me a spreadsheet with his available days, and my recommendation would be accept his offer of starting as soon as possible.
For EMS.
EMS, I beg
Yes,
your pardon.
EMS.
I beg your
He's
pardon.
the EMS
He's got
director.
the ambulance department.
That's
Yes.
it. I'm so used to saying EMS.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I agree. I think that if he can get himself orientated.
exactly. So when he sends me that schedule, I'll contact the chair if that's agreeable to everybody, and we'll work it out. And
What was the name again?
Dennis with 2 N's, Simmons. As I said, I met him today for the first time.
Nice.
He's very nice. I was part of the, Catherine and I were part of the interview process.
Okay, so those first 2 announcements were positive, and I was very surprised. I'd never met the man, but Doug Fowler regrettably offered his resignation, effective in 2 weeks, which I made, even though I don't know the man, I whimpered and did the appropriate affirmations. But that's just how it's going to be. I'm sorry to have to announce that.
And Doug Fowler,
Doug
road
Fowler.
commissioner.
Yeah. Heard nothing but good things about him. So that's
I'll make a motion to accept Doug's resignation in deep regret.
with deep regret.
I'll second
The other small
Oh, wait,
things.
I
We
gotta
have to
vote.
vote on that.
I'm
All
sorry.
those in favor? 5-0. Thank you.
Finalizing budgets, Bernice has input most of the data that she can. Few outstanding bits from Public Works, EMS, and wastewater treatment. Of course, Richard is brand new. Tomorrow morning, the FEMA man is coming in, Kirk and Dirt. He's coming in for the last amounts from that storm in 2017. There's some minor paperwork left that'll release the last of the funds. So that'll be happening in the morning, and Kathy will be there with me. She's got a file about this thick, and so we'll go through that. The only other thing is getting ready for the town audit. The municipality has its draft, and unfortunately the school department had to file for an extension, so we cannot submit our audit.
We don't have a final audit
We
until
don't have a
that's
final audit.
finished.
Because the school hasn't finished theirs yet.
Correct, and they filed for an
They
extension.
filed for an extension.
Okay.
So that's really all I have.
You're talking the year that ended,
June 30, 18. You've already seen a draft of our end of it.
Right.
You saw one back in like October.
yeah. The schools aren't ready after
The
7 months.
schools aren't finished yet, and yes, they have to be done by a certain time, which is why they've had to file an extension.
Didn't we receive a preliminary?
For the town side, yes, you saw a draft of the town side back in October. Fred came and
Right,
presented it to
but
you.
didn't we receive one from the school, a preliminary from the school at one point? I thought we had.
I think we have seen something, but it's not finalized.
It's
So
not
they've had to
finalized.
They've had to, Jason, do you know?
No, I'm not surprised about the attention.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, DOE sent us a letter telling us today that
Who did?
the Department of Ed.
Okay, other board business. We have assessor business. We have an abatement. David Covey and Barry Lewis, map RO5, lot 129, for $1,026.38. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second it. All those in favor? We have a supplemental for Noria Energy Wiscasset LLC, map U17, lot 004B, for $2,969.71.
I'll move this one.
I'll second it. All those, I'm sorry.
I couldn't let it go by without at least mentioning, this was the supplemental that I questioned 2 months ago.
Yes.
As not being complete.
Yes,
As it turns out, it wasn't complete.
yes.
It does bother me a little bit that, you know, we get this stuff on official looking paper and we only got half a story last time. And it also bothers me that it took 2 months to get it corrected. It shouldn't take 2 months to fix a supplemental.
This was the piece of property that was listed incorrectly, the piece that we sold out by the
Right.
service station. It was in the wrong person's name, so we had to abate that person and then supplement, only one supplemental for 1 year got done.
Yeah, that's the one we sold on the back, out on Route 1?
Oh, by the
Yes.
shopping center.
Yes.
Which, now that we've issued 2 supplementals, why was there only 1 abatement?
You need to talk to your assessor.
Hmm?
You need to talk to your assessor. I don't know either.
Well, the thing is, 2 months ago, I could have come in the next day and looked it up in a half hour. But I'm just gonna go through the government the way we do things. Like I said, it took 2 months. I'm just pointing out to the board that it did take 2 months.
Right.
And I wonder, when citizens call up and they have a question or complaint, how long do they have to wait?
Well, how many hours does the assessor here? I mean, that's a good
It's
question.
only part-time.
He's only
Yeah.
here, what, twice a month, is it?
During the regular off-season, so to speak, and then he's here once a week during crunch time to get the rest of the evaluating done and the commitment together. I'm sorry. He's here for a couple times a month when the off-season, and then he's here once a week when the busy season for them to finish the assessments and to get the commitment together. So whatever the contract, we have a contract with
Right.
them, so it's whatever the contract is that we have with those folks for Ellery to be here.
I'm just pointing out, you know, what's happened, but
Right. There is a time.
are we getting, I mean, we went this way to save money, but when you save money, you give up other things.
Yeah. You're gonna give up efficiency.
Well-
And somebody being there to
Well,
help.
we have a lot of efficiency and we are trying to collect every tax dollar we can
Right.
collect. And here's $3,000 that was just sort of thrown out the window,
I agree.
or almost thrown out the window. All right, I seconded the motion, right? No, I made the motion.
You made a motion. Have we voted?
No, all those in favor?
Thank you.
5-0, thank you. Okay, the next one is, we're not going to adjourn. I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session on personnel matters, 1 MRSA 4056A.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. And as I said, there'll be no... Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's as good as I went on. But I was afraid we could be delayed. I'll Okay, thank you. All right.